There's our friend. Hello, we're all here. This is wonderful. Thank you all for connecting today. And thank you to everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it for taking your lunch hour with us. So we're so glad to have you all at this month's Founder to Franchisor conversation with Haven's founder, Britt Riley. My name is Karina Halloran, and today I will be your moderator. As you may know, in our webinar series, Britt invites thoughtful, meaningful dialogue about what it truly means to build a purpose-driven brand, one designed to make a real difference for families and communities. And today's guests certainly know a lot about working with a purpose-driven brand. So with that in mind, we are welcoming Haven's founder, Britt Riley, and Haven's franchise advisor and board member, Dave Keil, alongside president of Haven Franchising, John Collins. Our hope today is to have an exciting discussion about what's under Haven's hood, our special secret sauce, so to speak, and Dave and John are certainly key ingredients for that. So the main focus of our discussion will be on how intentionality coupled with strong business models sets Haven apart from other franchises. In addition, we'll focus on what it takes to create a franchise that people truly value and why Haven has the potential to reshape how families live, connect, and thrive. So our goal is to have a 25-minute to ish chat, and then we'll do a Q&A. So please drop your questions into the chat. The chat is always a wonderful way to expand upon our conversation further. So without further ado, Britt, John, and Dave will do a much better job of introducing themselves. So I will pass the mic to Britt.
Hello. Thank you. I it's wild how many months have gone by now that we've been doing this. I think this is the sixth one. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. But we finally got Dave and John in the same space, which I can tell everybody is really awesome. And John's been with us since day one. He very much background in impact and purpose-driven brands of his career at Patagonia. So I've really always looked to Johnny as a mentor. And then Dave has been with us now for almost 3 years.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
That was
great.
fast.
Is it two? Maybe
No, I think it's probably, you're right. I think
almost three
it's
years.
probably, yeah, I bet it's three.
Yeah, and in those 3 years, we've learned an immense amount from you and your experience. Dave has been president of brands like Pure Bar and Haagen-Dazs shops and Honey Baked Ham and all sorts of lots of brand names that we all know and love. But importantly, they're all are also franchise-based brands, which means he has been very intimately involved in making sure that he knows what works and then also what doesn't work. And so what he's brought to us is helping us, not have to make the same mistakes that some brands have made, but then also he's really embraced our desire to and our commitment to do this right. So I think, Dave's got a big focus on purpose-driven brands, and he can tell more about that too at some point. But that is something which in our heart and at our core, that's what we are. And so being able to spend this time sharing a little bit about, the connection here, but then also how much we've learned from both Dave and Johnny and how much we're continuing to learn as we're growing. And just sharing you guys with the rest of the world makes me so happy.
You're too kind.
Forgot to mention Dave's just fun to be around and work with too. So
Both of you guys.
Yeah. And John taught me how to fly fish. So it's all going around. We're all one big family.
Yep.
Dave, actually, with that in mind, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself? Just a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I'll do a quick one, and then my hope is I can do a little longer one later. But I don't want to make this intro too awkward. My name's Dave Keil, and I always like to start with my mission in life. So I set off a long time to go to live a life on purpose. That's always been a part of what I've tried and intended to do. And my life mission that I live today, that how I prioritize what I work on, is really three things. One is to love my family well. I'm actually in Pennsylvania with my daughter who just had a brand new baby 12, 13 days ago now. So that's awesome. So that's a number one priority for me. Another big one is to actually share lessons on purpose. And I was that dad at the kitchen table that uh, kids would come home from school and we'd sit around at dinner and we'd be talking about our day. And I'd point out, hey, there's a life lesson in there. And the kids would roll their eyes, of course, when they're teenagers. But now I think they've really adopted it and value that. So I continue to blog and talk about that. And then third, and how I spend the preponderance of my time is scaling companies for good. That's how I spend my time. I'm lucky enough to be retired from kind of day to day and P&L responsibilities and leading big teams, but that's how I prioritize my time today. And Haven fits directly in the middle of that. It's all about. It really is a family. Feels like a family. Um, and as Britt and John will tell you, it's very much purpose driven, and we are scaling, and we're doing it the right way. So I think that's probably the best way to tee this up about who I am in this context.
I love that. And John, would you care a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give a quick thought on my journey. I left college and went into a corporate job in New York City, and I made it about 2 years until I decided that maybe I was listening to too many Jimmy Buffett songs at the time or something, but I decided that I couldn't handle that, and I needed to follow my passion. So I actually left there and went out to Jackson Hole and taught skiing and worked as a fly fishing guide, and then started my own fly fishing company after that, and then left there and went sailing for about 2 years, which all led me to work for Patagonia, which was a company that was aligned with a lot of my passions in the outdoors. And I think what happened from there was I really started to understand that business can have an impact in a positive way, as well as have you have a very viable and wonderful career. I was there for 25 years, started as a sales rep, ended as the head of global sales for the company, and got the opportunity to travel the world and also to make a difference in, the environment and business for a positive change. So it was a really, really great experience. And then a couple of other gigs in between here and there. And as Britt said, I've been with Haven since it started, and I just love the company and what it's about and what it's trying to do and what it's offering other business people too. So that's my quick story. Like Dave,
Thank
I could
you.
make it a lot longer if I wanted to. I'm just not going to do
We'll save that for another day. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. So we're going to start from the top. Dave, from your experience, what are the three most important ingredients that a franchise must have, and how does Haven have all three?
Yeah, I've been in. Tell you what, let me just tell a quick story first, if that's okay. I mean, if I'm totally going off
Absolutely.
script, you can tell me to
No, 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 no,
answer
no.
the question
Story
asked. But
away.
Go
I
ahead.
just think it might be helpful, if that's okay, to
Please.
give you a little bit about the background and just how some of the lessons I learned that I promise they have implications for Haven. Brent mentioned a few, but and then I will get to your question. But the first franchise brand I worked for was Haagen-Dazs Shops, which you guys probably all know, the Haagen-Dazs brand, global brand. That is where I, though, fell in love with the model of franchising. We had about 700 scoop shops around the globe and really learned the power of the model, of the franchise model. It was a franchise concept in the States, maybe 260 units. And I just fell in love with the combination. There's maybe listeners that don't really know what a franchise is or maybe have a, mixed connotation about what it is. And really simply, there's a corporate team that has intellectual property and an operating system that they license to a franchisee. And then that franchisee is the mayor of that brand. They own that brand in their town. And I fell in love with that. I'm a engineer by training, so I love the processes and procedures and, rule toolkits and key performance indicators, all that stuff that the franchisor provides the training. But the funnest part about it is you enable individual entrepreneurs. So I totally love that. That analogy I used to use was brands are like a river, and they go wherever you want them to go, and that they flow and they have life just like a river does, always changing, never the same. But the two sides of the river are the franchisees on one side, the individual owner operators, and the franchisor on the other, and together, they can direct that river anywhere. So that I learned that at Haagen-Dazs. The next stop was Honey Baked Ham, again, a when I joined, 59-year-old family owned business, and the brand there was just so special. But we had to unpack it. We spent a lot of our time when I was there thinking about slice thickness of the ham, like how and it should be 6 slices per inch, by the way, if your listeners are wanting to know that. A little fun party fact. But we spent a lot of time on that and glaze coverage and all these functional benefits of the business. And really, when we began to unpack the true why of the brand, why people spend more than they would at a grocery store to buy a ham, what we realized was that the true essence of the brand was about making occasions more special. So I really learned to help brands unpack their why, their mission, their vision, their value proposition, their unique why in that greater context. I went to Pure Barre next, again, 600 unit fitness. And there, it was on its second private equity owner when I stepped in. And the founder had been gone for 4 years, Carrie Dorr. Amazing. And founded, this is a exercise program using the bar, a ballet bar. So incredibly effective, efficacious. But we had lost our way. The company had lost its way because the founder had been gone. And so we brought her back. I said, look, I'll come be CEO if, Carrie, you come back to be, play your founder role, get innovation going. And so that's where I truly learned on my journey the power of a founder, the power of a Brit in this context that knows the ethos, that has the heart and soul. And it's so important that that stays embedded in any brand. And then finally, I led a company called the Lash Lounge, which was a emerging brand. The founder had just had gotten up to 19 units, is operating 19 units. We had sold 350 units. So, and we didn't have much of a team. And so that's where I really learned the power of emerging brands. We can talk about that more and why I love them so much. And then spent the next 5 years of my career working in a franchise incubator, helping bring small regional businesses to life, but also the power of the support staff. So a couple lessons, and now I'll try to bring it back together and answer your question. So the three most important things of any franchise system is, one is the macro economy, the macro market within which they play. So if it's ice cream or, savory hams or exercise, what's the market? How many consumers will come in? So that's one of the most important things. If you look at a venture capital firm, that's what they're selecting on, is the market. They want to go after those consumers. And it's the same in franchising. We're all about expansion. And so we need to know that our solution is solving a problem. Second, it's about the unit level economics. I mean, these are businesses. These are small businesses. More than half the jobs created in the US come from small businesses. But this is what makes the engine of the United States run, but they may need to make money. And so that is extremely important, is that if the unit level, can it make money? And, many of you probably seen it yourself, many small businesses fold around you, right? The little corner store that's been like 4 or 5 things since you lived there. It's hard to make your own business by yourself. And only 15% of stores like that actually make it in 5 years, whereas 85% of franchise-backed stores make it. So it's helpful to do it not alone. And then finally, and third, is the support infrastructure. What I learned at the last launch, you've got to have a support infrastructure. People like John, people like Britt, and their large team. So those are the big three.
That's amazing. Actually, John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the key ingredients about a franchise, especially through the lens of what you've done with Hayden and how you see it evolving in the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, that was really well said, Dave. And those three ingredients are things that I've heard Dave say before, and I make sure to pay attention to that. I think the biggest thing for any great business to succeed, though, is to first identify a need in the market, identify something that somebody else hasn't seen, and something that someone else hasn't done. And the second is, as Dave mentioned, the why. How are you going to do it? What are you going to stand for? What matters to you as a brand? And those things are really important to identify early on. And I think that's something that I know Britt did when she founded Haven, is saw a need that wasn't being filled in the marketplace, saw a antiquated system that wasn't evolving with the times. So that was really important. And then the second part is, who are we and why are we doing this? And defining those pillars and those values for the organization are a huge part of, what makes you great in the long term, because there was a time when people would sell you trinkets, they would sell you services, and they would talk at you. And in today's environment now, it's a conversation, and customers have a lot more power than they used to have. And they want brands that are transparent, authentic, and they want brands that they can have a conversation with. And I think that's really, really an important part of what you need to build if you want to be successful long term. I don't know if I answered your question directly, did I?
No, I totally agree. I love it. I
No, we're
just
not really. You're sorry about this. We're
That's
like, so
fine.
you're asking a question, then we're just answering whatever we want. So,
No, yeah, answer what you want. So, Brett, here's a question for you that you can answer or not answer. But when you looked at back in 22 or so, when you looked at how you would like to expand, why franchising?
So it's really interesting actually, because when we opened the first club, and the reason why we did it was because I did want to evolve an industry that I felt like just hadn't been touched. And when you look at every all the ingredients of the industry and of why we're doing it and who we're helping to support, it really at the end of the day is we're supporting community, and we're supporting and building um, and providing a critical piece of their infrastructure, right? And one of the really important, and it showed up very quickly after we opened our first club, elements of that is the person who runs it, like the person who is the one who's the heartbeat of that community, who identified that they needed to have something different, whether it was because of their own experience as a parent, which is how it was for me, or um, because they've seen other people who they felt like, gosh, if only there were this, then I know that, their experience of early parenthood or whatever element it is would improve. Or even, and we hear this, I mean, we've had, I want to say 1,300 or more franchise requests. So, people who've reached out to us just in the past 4 months, who so many of those people are writing us these long notes about, I love my community and it deserves more. And it needs to have a solution like this. And we need to be able to, I want to be the person who brings it here. And then they'll tell me their why. And the difference when we opened the first club, we wanted to make sure that we totally nailed the curriculum, because this is not just, it's not babysitting, it's not daycare, it's certainly setting kids up with the strongest foundation that they possibly can have going into the rest of their lives. So we were very committed to, we're not even going to think about growing until we know that we've got the best childcare curriculum out there. So a few years into it, once we felt like we were really hitting our steam with that, we hired full-time curriculum and training team members who amazingly were also part of, the whole team who grew the clubs. Once we were able to kind of set that on its course and start to build it and know that that would serve as many clubs, as we opened, well, and just as well as the markets it was in, then we started looking at, okay, we're ready to grow. And once once that became a consideration, it was so quick for me to take into account the number one thing that I want to be able to achieve is to open a haven in as many communities as possible, but to do that with the community, like to do that with that. Because really, at the end of the day, and this is actually, I think this is something that comes, I've said it before, but I'm almost 100% sure it came from Patagonia, is the idea that, and actually it did, the idea that what we place into any community is kind of a gift to that community, right? And so in every way, what I wanted to do was make sure it was authentic, and that when we open that club in any town, that the person who owns it and runs it and is the heartbeat of it is part of it, because no one knows your neighborhood like you do, and there's so much to it. So once I realized that that was what we were focused on, then I was looking at, okay, well, can you do that as a corporate based brand? No, it's kind of in my experience of, obviously I've been a consumer for 40 years, or yeah, sure, since I was born. And when you look at the corporate based brands, they kind of lose a little bit of their authenticity at some point, and you kind of feel like, especially when it comes to a personalized experience, maybe a little bit disingenuous. And that was one thing which I very quickly was like, there's no way. I don't want to just plop a club into a neighborhood or into a community and then expect that it's going to operate with the magic and the like this incredible um just, what it does, what our clubs do for a group of people is really special. And I didn't think that you could just do that through a corporate location. So then I started studying, and it's really wild because the franchise word, which I think Dave was saying earlier, like you don't necessarily know what you don't know, but you definitely do know what you think you know. And for a long time, I thought I knew what a franchise was. And in my mind, a franchise was, like a McDonald's or a Subway, um, and it really didn't have a great connotation for me, and so I went into the idea of that as an option with a lot of skepticism, and a lot of kind of, I guess, preconceived notions. And so once I started really looking into it, what I was trying to find was, number one, I know that I want these clubs to be owned by the people who live in the community that they are open in. And two, I want to make sure that they're supported by the infrastructure and the team and the technology and, everything that we possibly can put together to make sure that they get to spend more time with each other. They don't have to spend as much time doing, the mundane. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that they are a location that 20, 30 years from now, when they've, sold to someone else in the community who wants to carry it forward or pass it down to their kids, that it's still there, and that it's really thriving, and that it's a legacy that they feel proud to have been able to create and move forward. And so the best way to do it was through the franchise model. And because in order to achieve those two things, really it's created to be able to do that. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's it. At the end of the day, I want to be able to support them as much as possible and to be able to guide them and have their experience be one that is, positive and fun. Um, they're not going to have to dig every step out of the mountain like I had to find my way. But they will get to have as much fun as I have along the way, which is, I mean, it's been the best thing I've ever done for the past 8 years with these clubs. So yeah, it's wild. You learn. It's a huge learning curve to figure out what franchise actually is and if it works for your brand.
Oh, I love that so much. Dave, so can you speak about how the first dozen or so franchise owners are pioneers for any franchise? And then for Haven, this is absolutely the case because we're kind of in our segment alone. We're family care. We have premium childcare, shared and private workspaces, and then in-house fitness studio. So multiple things, one roof, one membership. And so can you expand upon this pioneer element, especially through the lens of Haven a little bit more, please?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Britt you were saying about, why you like franchising, and you're spot on. I mean, what we try to do is go take what Britt created as something magical, There's no question about it. That unique combination, Karina, that you talked about. So that's unique in the marketplace. So we're the first that are going to be offering that across the US. And so the secret of franchising is trying to say, how do we capture that? How do we productize that? The exactly what Britt built, and then go enable those individual owners. And again, I think that's the right approach, Britt, particularly because we are family care. You can replicate with just a kind of a manual and tools and equipment, making some type of food perhaps, but you certainly can't a model like this. So many variables, got to be community based. You're taking care of families. So that, I mean, that is so, so, so important. So once you've got that built, the first 12 or so that go do this in their own market, I think that's the best word, being a true pioneer. You're the first ones taking something that we've got all the processes and systems and protocols and tech, curricula, the whole bit ready, and you're taking it and you're the first mover in your market. And so it's very much the best word I think to describe it is you're the first to go, put down that flag in a new part. We know that. And we know those first dozen are so important because in my experience, that first dozen really sets the tone for an emerging brand. The good news about an emerging brand is that you get to have your pick. If you're in Chicago, like the Smalzers, there are first franchisees, they got their pick. They could put it wherever they want. That's beautiful. That's the beauty of the emerging brand. I think another beauty of it is that we, the franchisor, back to the river concept, we have absolutely the same shared objectives. That was my perception about franchising before, was that there's the franchisor who's making you do stuff and the franchisee who maybe doesn't want to do it, because you see the public battles about, Burger King on the dollar menu or whatever, right? But that's not the case at all. We have franchisor, which is what Haven is, and the franchisee have the exact same interests. We both want to support the brand. We both want to grow. We both want to be successful. And so we know how important those first dozen are. And so we're going to overserve them, right? We're going to over support them, just to make sure that they've got everything right. Picking their site, hiring their first few people, helping, they're going to price, but helping them figure out how best to price, their service in the market. So yeah, I think pioneers is probably the best word for it.
Oh, I love this. And John, with that pioneer mindset, we've spoken about how Haven itself and businesses themselves can change a broken system, and ever is the case with Haven. So I'd love to kind of get your thought. You call it conscious capitalism, and I know some folks are a little afraid of the word capitalism. But I just want to talk about Haven fixing the broken system.
Well, I don't think people should be afraid of capitalism, as Winston Churchill once said. It's the worst form of government, but it's better than any of the others. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, that there are problems that need to be solved in the world. One that we have in the United States, particularly, is the childcare system. It's I hate to say it, but it's broken. It doesn't allow for parents and families to have balance. The second largest commodity, other than money out there, is time, right? And it doesn't give you that balance of life, that time with your children, that time with each other. So for us, the conscious part of what we're doing is trying to give that back to people, and give that back to people through a really great program that, saves them driving time. I think we calculated something like 30 days a year of driving time if you use our services in a Haven Club. But I also think governments are not really set up in a way that they're going to fix these problems. They're not as high functioning. They're not as focused on everyday needs. So my definition of conscious capitalism are companies that realize that they can stand for something other than just making money. And I make sure to say that specifically because it doesn't mean you can't make money. It doesn't mean you can't be successful in a business. It just means that you could stand for something other than just making money. And I think that people identify with brands like that. They relate with brands like that. They become loyal to brands like that because they see themselves in that brand as part of that brand. I mean, I learned that in a really big way at Patagonia. We had huge loyal customers that would be the first to come to our defense in any situation because they knew as a brand we walked our talk.
Yep.
And that's one of the things I've just loved about Haven from the very beginning is that we walk our talk and we really believe it. As Dave said, for those first 12 or even beyond that, we're going to do everything we can to help our franchisees and partners be successful because it's in our best interest, of course, but it's also in their best interest, and it's in the best interest of their communities as well. So all of those things, you can look at conscious capitalism in a lot of ways, whether you're protecting the environment, whether you're helping underserved communities, whether you're Toms and giving shoes to people, in other countries. There's got to be something that you stand for other than just making money. And to be really honest, the best part of that is each day that you go home at the end of the day, you realize you've done something meaningful in someone's life somewhere. And that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Just a reminder for everyone who's enjoying our webinar today, please pop some questions into the chat so we can get to them before the end. Britt, can you speak, talking about this idea of pioneers and the first dozen or so franchisees, can you speak to that, please? Especially the impact that they'll have on their communities of what you've seen, especially at our locations in regards to impacting on families.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I look at whenever we open a new club, the first people who walk through the door, like the first members who come in for a tour and check it out and sign up. I I reflect on this with Morgan, sometimes and we're able to really kind of think back and Haley D'Souza has been with us since the beginning. She's our head of curriculum development and training now, but she was a teacher when we started our first club. And the three of us are able to kind of look back sometimes and think about those founding families who joined us first and they took the dive, and especially with the first location where we didn't really know, it was childcare, workspace, and fitness in the same building. And anybody who's seen our first building, it's not huge. And so we had to prove it. And we didn't know in the beginning if it would work. So they kind of came on this journey with us. And the thing which I saw in them, which I still hear about today from those members who all their kids have aged out, but we're still close, is that they knew that we were going to do it. They knew that we were showing up and that we were putting this into the community and putting it in front of them, and that the conviction with which we were doing so was going to work. And so then it was amazing because the people who literally out loud were like, is this too good to be true? Who at the time we had to say, I really hope not, but let's figure it out. Those people years later, like, man, did that show up? It was just, the best outcome you can have when you have that question, right? Like it's the best possible kind of thing to be able to be like, nope, it wasn't, it was awesome. Like that's jackpot, right? And so for me, I think of, especially when we're building things like, the programs for this first wave, this first, this first group of franchisees, when I think about the relationship that we already have with the Smalzers and, the even the relationships which we've developed with so many of the people who've reached out to us who they absolutely desperately want to have this in their communities, they're different, like we're close and there's something to be said for that. It's kind of like this founding member, they're founders, right? The people who are going to open our clubs, they're also founders. And so we're just showing up for them in that way. And they get a much more kind of personal experience of it. And we don't really have to put words to that. We don't really have to say it. It just really is the way that that happens. And I can tell you that as we grow, we're going to try and be able to continue to deliver that to as many clubs as we're able to successfully you know grow to. We're going to try as hard as we can to make all of those feel like this did. And so I think that's a really special kind of time to be in as a brand. Like it's very cool because we have done this we have built this in a way which at no point have we felt like we're just winging it, or at no point have we felt in our effort to scale and grow, have we, kind of just been like, well, we're just going to do it and see how it goes. We've been very thoughtful about the way that we implement this because we have an immense amount of responsibility to these founders who are growing with us. And so for the past 3 years, we raised a large amount of money. We've invested millions of dollars at this point to build the system, which is going to carry them forward. That system is built so that it exists in order to extend the support that each individual on our team is giving to our founding, club owners. And so when you look at the ripple effect of what we've been building out, we've got a team right now who, when you look at the backgrounds, Patagonia, Haagen-Dazs, Dogtopia, all sorts of different brands that people really do look to and look up to. All of that has been intentional in the sense that we're aligning with groups of people, including the operators who are going to found these clubs, who they first and foremost are all in on the idea that community is going to be, it has every single, full integrity. It's your culture is where everything starts. If you ever want to see how business is doing, look into their culture, like really just talk to their teams. And so people who are committed to that. And then, it's from there, we're excited to be able to go down the path with them because it's fun, and we're taking away a lot of the ambiguity, a lot of the stress, a lot of the, what do I do next? Because we're just identifying those kind of pain points or those points where I certainly had no experience opening brick and mortar or a childcare business when I went into this, but I definitely did have a lot of questions, and I kept asking questions until I got to the right one and figured out the right next step. And along that path and along the way, I was able to surround the brand with people who are exceptional at whatever those different things are. And so what we've put together is an experience which from start to finish, we hope is the best experience anyone, could have in opening and running a business. And it's been so much fun to build. So we're having a ball too.
And
With
if
the
I could
first
add to
phase.
that, I mean, that what Britt's describing is the right way to do this and scale. Right, all about replication. The way we're choosing to do it is franchising is all about making this thing repeatable. I mean, we took this business. Britt had built a beautiful system. We took it all the way down to the studs, though, when I engaged 3 years ago. I mean, we went back and redefined the mission, the vision, the values, our value proposition, the reasons to believe in those. We redid the way that we present ourselves, the logo that you can see above all the way to that, and the language that we use. We built operations manuals. We built site selection criteria. We built a brand new CRM, POS system, the whole bit. Like we took this thing down to the studs to make sure that it was scalable, repeatable. Only 30% of the some 4,000 franchise systems out there will succeed and do succeed. I mean, there's, that 4,300 a year cease to exist. And the reason is those three things I mentioned before. Either they don't have a great end market, and we know that there's a massive demand, back to what John was talking about before, for what Haven does. What these Haven clubs do brings so many missing parts together. So we know there's a massive market for it. We know that they're very effective if run properly and make money. And what Britt described, I think your listeners watchers should really take to heart is that so few franchise systems or people that scale do it this way. Raise money ahead of time and figure all this stuff out before we get to the start line. I told you my story of the last launch. We had 350 sold and we had a handful of people and didn't have all that stuff. We had to build it on the fly. And that's that's how many franchise systems or individual businesses fail. They haven't planned ahead. They hadn't not at all figured out ahead of time. So we're ready to go. And that's what's so exciting about this season right now at Haven.
And the only idea of yours that we rejected was you wanted us to sell ham, and we just said no. It's
I
probably not
still
hard.
think it's not a, but maybe like as a lunch item, it could be a win-win.
Love the idea of free him. Um, so this is a question from our audience. And John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because it kind of builds off of what Dave and Britt have just been speaking about. So there's a person in our audience who loves the idea and our model, but doesn't have the experience in childcare and has never owned their own business. And so would you still consider someone like this person and others like them
Absolutely.
as a possible owner? And like, can you talk about how the team works and maybe the flow so that folks know they're never alone?
Well, the question was answered right when I heard two things, which is I love the model and love what it's doing. So that's really what we want is we want people that are passionate. And to go back to what both Britt and Dave were just referring to is that we took the time to build that system. Britt and team made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, learned from those mistakes, and were able to answer a lot of those difficult questions that people have coming into this. What we need are people that are passionate about their community. You can hire for teachers, you can hire for your director to make sure that the curriculum and the classes are all taken care of. But I always think about this when I've hired people in the past, is there are certain things you can put in and there's certain things that you can't put in. And the biggest thing you can't put in is personality, passion, drive, motivation, all of those things. So if the person asking this question has those things, they can own a haven and they can be really successful with that haven because we're going to be there to help them along the way. And not only getting set up, but once the doors are open too. And then the other part of this, which I think is fantastic, and this is the thing I didn't know about franchising when I got into it, is this community and the community of other franchisees, the community of even people who are competitors or in other businesses are always there to lend a hand. And I think that is the part of franchising I had no idea about, but it really is quite a really strong and helpful community. So I would just say if you have any doubts at all, just give us a call. Let's sit down and talk, and we can figure out if it's right for you. Bottom line on that.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're totally fine with people. We've if you've never opened a store, found commercial property, that's okay. Like
Yeah.
we've got all that built out. We've got a site selection criteria. We'll help you find a location. I mean, you'll eventually make the decision, but we're right there with you and give you every tool about demographics, socio-demographics, all that in your market. What are
Mhm.
those criteria? All that stuff. So it's all figured out. We've got a toolkit and a playbook for it. I agree with
Mhm.
John. You got to have a passion for it. You've got to, want to go be that mayor of Haven in your community. And if
Yeah.
you're willing to follow the system, then yeah, you'll succeed.
I can add to that too in the one thing. So I left corporate and started Haven, and I had had a career which I loved, right? Like absolutely loved for a while. But what I realized was, especially for the way that my life, had was the shape of what it was looking like, I really wanted to show up for my family and for the girls and to be an awesome mom, and I wanted to be an awesome professional still. I love my career. I never in a million years, even considered stepping out of the workforce. And that's just my personal kind of, just how I'm wired. But when I realized how desperately so many other people needed the services that would be offered if you combined childcare, workspace, and fitness, then it was kind of I couldn't sleep until I saw it. I basically couldn't stop until it existed. And when we're talking to different people who are considering, the idea of opening a haven in their community, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for someone who's like, it's a big change. I don't care what you're doing. any big change comes with, fear and risk, and it has to, because you don't make successful big changes without those things. They're a requirement in order for you to look around the right corners. And so when I look at, going down those paths, it's kind of it, that's what we're looking for. We can figure it, the rest of it we can teach, and at the end of the day, and this is something which I thought about way before we even opened the first club, is as long as we nail culture and we live wholly into our values from our team outward, we'll be successful. And secondly, as long as you just don't stop, you don't give up, you just keep going down the path. And that was one thing which over the past 8 years consistently, one, I've never once doubted the idea of what we're offering and what we're trying to bring to each community that we exist in. Never once. And then two, it's really just the idea that you consider, okay, what are all, what's in front of me? I have this opportunity to open this business. What are my fears? For me, it was I had never opened a brick and mortar business before, and I had never been in childcare. Those were two huge concerns, obviously, going into something. But what I kept coming back to was, as long as I align myself with the right people, find people who are really very good at what they do, and then do the research, then I'll be able to figure it out. And I'll keep going until I can't anymore. And we're still here, which is great. But really what I found, and then what I built alongside it along the way, was this culture and this team, and basically writing the operations manual along the way. Like Saul Werman from TED Talks, he writes a manual for every single thing he gets interested in so that he can show people how to do it in the future. And that's kind of what we're doing with this, is we're showing best practices. But the other thing too, and this is important, is real estate. Dave said we've got all that stuff covered. We've got, the team and the practices. And then the second thing, which is critical, is the culture and the people who you bring in. We know the importance of an amazing director. But most importantly, and this connects to what Johnny was saying, we know what to look for. You're going to be the one who's going to hire it. That director. You're going to be the one who's, sourcing your team. But we're going to provide you with everything that we know is, this is best practice for you to look for in order to create a culture that is a haven culture. And so we'll give, sample descriptions, but most importantly, we'll train on what to look for in character, because at the end of the day, character is going to be what's going to drive performance. So it's those things. And when I look at that package, it's kind of like, okay, if I were me going into this again, having not done what I hadn't done, would I feel confident walking down that same road with us? And that's a question that I answer, and I've been answering for years since we've gone down this growth journey. And the answer is absolutely. I'd be
Well,
skipping.
I just need to add that one of the best things I've heard you say, and you've said it many times, is even on its hardest day, it's the best career you've ever
Oh,
had in your life.
yeah, without a doubt, all day long.
That says something.
Yeah.
It says a
Oh,
lot.
yeah.
And
And
actually,
we had
Dave,
to operate through COVID, so
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. And Dave and John, you both have background at corporate or in corporate. So John, can you talk about that a little bit? And Dave, I would also love to hear your thoughts. Like, how do you, if you were speaking to somebody who's facing burnout, who's kind of like, oh, I might have another impending restructure, or what do I do with my bonus? If things are great, or yeah, just that kind of at that career moment for them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Either of you can start.
Yeah. Go ahead, Johnny. You go ahead.
I mean, I think, look, corporate I think we've all seen the movie Office Space, right? And there are some corporations and some businesses that you just feel like you're, moving things around a desk or and there's this thing that's got you there, which is money and benefits and, livelihood and security and all of those things. And that's great. And that's an important part of everybody's life. But you also spend so much of your time at work. You spend so much of your time with your work colleagues. You spend so much of your brain power and stress around work. It should have meaning. Some corporations provide that meaning and the job that you're doing. I mean, the meaning is going to be different for every individual, right? Some people love accounting. Some people love process. Some people love sales. And maybe you find that connection and your work has meaning regardless of where you are. But for others, it's that moment in life where you just say, look, what am I doing? I'm spending 40 to 60 hours a week doing something that if and I'll just tell one quick story, which is when I left my job in New York, I walked to the office one day and before I walked in the door, I realized that if I had walked up to that building and it had burned down the night before, I probably just would have put my headphones on and kept walking and not really cared about it. And I realized at that moment that it wasn't something that meant something to me. And so I had to go find something that meant something to me.
Yeah, I echo that. You guys heard my mission. That was developed. It evolved over a lifetime. And so my counsel is really, know how you're wired, and what is pulling, where are you gifted. Um, and I think if you really can understand that, um, create a little time to think about what it is that you might really want to go do that leverages that, and a place that tugs on your heart or is important to you about where can you point that. It's really just saying what John said a different way,
That's
which
true.
is, and I think if you have that combination of, desire to be part of your community, if you look at the data, there's real value creation, wealth creation that happens by owning your own business.
Yep.
Different from the W-2 every week, coming every week, and, healthcare is included and all that stuff. This is the brave new world, right? So I think you've got to know yourself well enough to say, what do I want to go make an impact on? Is that something I want to go do? How am I wired? And am I good with owning my own business? Even if, as the person asked the question, even if you hadn't done it before. If you're an entrepreneur and you have a great new idea, then you should go do it, like Britt did. Go solve your own problem, be an entrepreneur. But if you want to be a small business owner, I shared the statistics before, 6x more likely to succeed if you're doing it not by yourself, doing it with the support infrastructure that we've spent years and years and millions of dollars, supporting it. But I think it all comes back to that why, and knowing yourself. If you want to be an owner and be that pillar in your community that brings a service like this to your community, that deep inside. And I think that's what you just got to figure out for
It's well
yourself.
said. Well said.
Love that. As we near the top of the hour, there's a question that we ask all of our franchisees, or sorry, our guests, and then we'll ask our franchisees. But what gives you hope? Britt, I'll start with you. What gives you hope? And when you think about Haven's future?
Oh, this week, I can tell you the thing that gives me hope is my life has come full circle again in a way which I hadn't really had on my radar. Maybe I did a little bit, but Friday we brought the girls to the club in New Jersey, and they're 8 and 10 now, and they were so excited to be there. Obviously, there's been, a hole for me since Zoe had to graduate, and I couldn't continue extending Haven to high school. But they walked in, and Zoe was like, can I, can I go and visit with the infants? I love infants. And so, of course, Chrissy, who, she's, amazing there. And all the teachers and team members are incredible at that location of course, so they take her in and she spent, some time, with the babies. And then Harper, who's 10, was kind of like, are there, can I, like, the older kids are all playing outside. Can I go play outside with them and we'll do some games? And so she went out and she started, she's like she's kind of like a conductor, or so she started creating all these fun games and got all these kids to run around and play games with her. And then at dinner that night, we were asking, girls, like, how's your day? Was it cool? Because I was in meetings and stuff. And Zoe was just like, I absolutely fell in love with this baby. And, his name was Crockett, and I just love him. And I want to work in the club so badly. Can I work in the clubs? I want to help babies learn how to sit up. She had realized that that's something you have to learn. And she's game. She's there for it. She wants to help make sure they can figure that part out. And so that obviously made my heart explode. And then Harper, she was just telling, she was like, I mean, can I go there every week and then we can do, and I can't remember, and I'm gonna have to remember. She said something Wednesday, and she basically wanted to start a really fun game, you know, uh program with all the kids outside on Wednesdays. And so the kids basically have decided they want to work at Haven, and I have a ton of hope, you know, for Haven, obviously, but just generally, if the girls who have grown up, since they were 3 and 2 around Haven, they love it so much. They can see how much it meant to them. But now the empathy and the amount of care and just the depth of kind of, they they care about other people so much and they want to give back. And so just seeing them go back into the environment in a different kind of role, um, it blew my mind. And then hearing parents, I heard a parent the next day who's like, those were your girls, because my daughter came home from the club last night and was saying, oh, there was this girl and she was playing with that and we played these games and it was awesome and she loved it. So yeah, I don't know. That's a very kind of personal version of hope, but yeah, it lit up my life for sure. Seeing the next generation of people caring deeply about Haven and the people who are in the building.
It's fostering kind human beings in
Yeah.
action. So Dave, what gives you hope?
I'm sitting today in my 13-day-old granddaughter's nursery. That's where I'm taking this call. Um, and so I'm a father of three. My youngest is 27, oldest is 35, and a grandfather of six. And the learning that I've had from Haven is this: how important those first 5 years are. I kind of knew that. I didn't know the data behind that. You go read that and understand how important 0 to 5 is. The fact that a Haven exists, warms my heart. And I hope we hurry up and put some franchises around where my grandkids are going to grow up,
Mm.
because I would put them in there in a heartbeat. You
Yeah.
know, and I that really does give me hope. That I was part of a dual career family for 30 years. My wife and I both worked. That was important to us. Gosh, we so wish that this existed today, and it wasn't. It was pretty transactional, I would say, daycare that we drop kids off on. And
Yeah.
I it gives me hope that something like this exists for families today.
And last but not least, John.
I hope we facilitate connection. That's really one of the things that I think that is so special about Haven. It's not quantifiable. It's not in the operations manual. It creates its own personality, and I've seen that with the members, and I've seen that with the clubs. You go to any airport in the world nowadays, and everybody's sitting on this damn thing.
Yeah.
And people aren't connecting the way that they once did. And I just have seen in the clubs these moments where it's like a country club without a golf course. And people are having a great time. They're connecting with each other's families. The kids are making friends. The parents are making lifelong friends. They're networking. And that's just the part you can't really describe. But yeah, that's my hope, that we facilitate connection, and with a network of clubs that could be, a lot larger in a lot of different places. Um, and I just know too that I think about Chrissy, who is a director and does a lot with our Gladstone Club, and just how she's become an integral part of her community, and how people look to Chrissy for a lot of things now, and she looks to her community for a lot of things. And yeah, that connection is so missing in our world these days, that I'm really excited that we're able to provide that.
Amazing. Oh, you all, this has been such a wonderful, wonderful way to spend a lunch hour. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you to everyone who attended today. We all learned a lot, and that childcare is not enough. Families need holistic family care. So at Haven, we're intentionally designed to meet this moment, especially with our robust franchise model. So we'd love to connect with you all again, especially if you're looking to bring Haven to your community. So please reach out. We will have a webinar in June, so please stay tuned, and we can't wait to connect again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
thank
Great.
you. Bye,
Thank
Thanks, Dave.
everyone.
you.
Thanks,
See you
Britt.
soon.
Yeah, thanks you
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.